Just a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about the fact that Sony and the Apollo Group came together and offered a $26 billion buyout of Paramount. And while the talks continued, something happened behind the scenes that changes everything. Sony and Apollo are out, Skydance Media is in. So what's happened in the last couple weeks is that Sony and Apollo pretty much continued their ongoing talks in terms of what was going to happen with everything and the $26 billion offer. Well, as I covered before, the idea was to split up the ownership of all the franchises between Sony and Apollo, and then Apollo could do whatever they want with their half. They could license it out to anybody, while Sony would retain whatever franchises they landed on. Obviously, Sony was interested in this because it was going to be a viable security blanket for them to be able to buy themselves more time and not go the way of WB or Fox. Well, things might be going that way for them because they could not complete the offer and instead ended up pulling back, to the point where Paramount started talks with Skydance. And if you want to know what Skydance is involved with, you probably are aware of their recently announced video game, Marvel's 1943, multiple other video games, a TV series that they're involved with, and films going forward. Now, Skydance also is involved with things like Top Gun Maverick, Mission Impossible, Transformers Rise of the Beasts, for example, a bunch of stuff that Sony was hoping to get their hands on because of the proximity to Paramount and everything, and because they've had crossover working with multiple studios through their production houses and everything. Well, while Skydance continued to do what they were doing, Paramount obviously saw the partnership, they weighed all their options, and it was announced that things are going very differently. Now, I'm not going to bore you with the logistics, but there's something called Class A voting shares and Class B, and it's all nonsensical that I don't need to go over all that for you. But the point is that the offer for this merger, buyout, stock mergers, and everything is lower than the $26 billion that Sony and the Apollo Group offered, but the merger would be quicker. Everybody would be happier. They don't have to go through many or as many regulations for approval, and it would more or less be a simpler deal to complete, and they don't have to then worry about piecing out things, selling off individual franchises like they would have with Sony and Apollo. So more or less it looks like they're willing to take a smaller offer after Sony and Apollo said, well, we got to analyze this, but also secure more or less a better future for both. So we're going to know what happens really, really soon. It's sounding like tomorrow we might have some major details. Again, we'll talk about that when it hits, but things are about to change once again, and Sony seems to be in trouble again. So my fan fiction of the Amazing Spider-Man and RC getting together, guess I can't sell them that script anymore. Man, better start rewriting that.